One of the things as a business coach I like to see people do is continue to find opportunities to grow their business, but to also make a difference in the world. And I really think that what Greg's got going on here is going to do both of those things. Welcome to the Business Brains and B.S. podcast, the podcast for people building businesses, battling their own brains, and occasionally stepping in a little BS along the way. So Greg and I have talked multiple times about the concept of mentoring, and we've talked about the fact that, you've got so many great opportunities in the world now with, with recordings, with books, with podcasts. I mean, you can be mentored by somebody who's no longer with us, right? Because of the technology that we have now. And this is actually a pretty exciting episode for me because we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of evolution mental health. Because Greg has got some pretty cool stuff going on with his business. And one of the things as a business coach I like to see people do is continue to find opportunities to grow their business, but to also make a difference in the world. And I really think that what Greg's got going on here is going to do both of those things. So Greg, if I haven't totally let the cat out of the bag, you want to share with everybody a little bit about what you've got coming up?
Well, so, we do therapy, right? Everybody knows we provide therapeutic services, individual therapy, group therapy, couples therapy, family therapy, and then we do some extra kind of cool things like neurofeedback and EMDR and ketamine assisted therapy and mindfulness. And so we have all these services that we offer to the public to help them with their mental health. And that's always going to be, that's who we are and what we do. But it's also always been important to me in this business that in some way or another, we're giving back to like our peers, to the treatment community. It's literally built into our mission statement. That's part of our mission is we're trying to help, the mission statement is we're facilitating the evolution of our team. So the people that work here, our clients, and then the treatment community, and then the community at large, and so we've done that, through different ways. I've been a licensure supervisor for a few years now, and we've got a couple other people who can do that as well. I've been providing continuing education for as long as I've had this business. That's been part of our business, one of the services we offer. And so what I'm really focusing on, what I want to do coming up is expanding that side of things. I want to, I've been asking myself, how can I do even more, for all my peers, for the treatment providers in the state of Oklahoma, not even just in the Tulsa area. I'm licensed in the state of Oklahoma. I'm a continuing education provider in the state of Oklahoma. So that means if you're a therapist in Oklahoma, like you're in that group, So as I said, we've been providing continuing education for years. And I started with thinking like, how can I make that better? What could we do with that to make that a better experience? And I've also recently, over the last few months, been focusing on like, how can I make working at Evolution Mental Health Services a better experience? How can I provide more support for the team here? One of the things we started doing was a regular staffing. So in my world, that means we all meet up. And if you have issues that you're struggling with a client, you show up and you can get feedback from the other therapists, for this particular client or this particular issue that you're trying to figure out. So that was something that people on the team wanted. I thought, okay, well, I can provide that. But that's one of those things I hear people say that they want all the time. Everywhere I've ever worked, people want to staff clients, So there's continuing education. There's like a need and a desire for staffing. And then I've been at this for a while now. I don't, there are people who've been doing this a lot longer than me, and I don't pretend to know everything about everything, but I feel like at this stage in my career, I know enough about enough things that I can help, in certain issues. And so also, want to be able to provide like some consultation, for people that are struggling in different areas, like whether it's, they're not sure what to do with clients or whether it's aspect like business side of things. I wouldn't be so bold as to say I could, go, help some CEO of Fortune 500 company run their business better. That would be pretty foolish, I think, on my part. But I do have a pretty good understanding of running a counseling business. I think not that I'm perfect at it, um, but I've learned quite a bit about that, and I've learned quite a bit about like building programs and different things like that. And so that's just a long-winded way of saying I've been trying to figure out how can I offer that to other mental health professionals. So that to answer your original question, that's something that we're going to try to start providing is all of those things: a better continuing education experience, better opportunities, um, as well as staffing opportunities, not just for the people that work for Evolution Mental Health Services, but for anyone who's a therapist in the state of Oklahoma. And then consultation services. If there's a therapist out there that's struggling and trying to figure out some aspect of their profession, if I can help them out, I want to be able to help them so that the profession as a whole is growing and evolving. And there's a lot to that, and we don't have nearly all the kinks worked out yet, but I've got a good team of people that are working with me on that. And so that's the vision, and we're hoping to bring that in the next few months.
First of all, I'm calling BS on you saying that you don't think you could help a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100 CEO run their business better, because there's no doubt in my mind that you could, because a different perspective, especially coupled with your knowledge, would make a huge difference. So I'm throwing BS on that. I'm throwing a flag on that one. But to kind of maybe take it in a little bit different direction here, as you were talking, you made me think about kind of that ripple effect, right? You take a pebble, you throw it out in a lake, makes a little splash, and then you got ripples that go all the way to every part of the shore. So with what you're doing, you're going to be making a big impact on people. So how does it feel to know that the people who you're going to be working with, it's going to change how good of a therapist they are, and it's going to make a difference in the lives of all of their clients as well?
I guess how it feels is it just feels natural. Um, like it doesn't, I don't have any grand feelings about it. I've always been a believer that, I mean, that's the reason I named my business Evolution. Like that's how life works, and you, you get to a point in whatever it is you do where if you achieve a certain level of skill or something like that, it's only natural to try to like impart that to other people, to try to help other people with that. And if you're, I don't know, it makes total sense to me. If you're a great baseball player with a passion for the game, and you get to the point where you're not able to perform at the highest level, but you still have something to give. So going into coaching or something like that makes total sense. Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I appreciate that you think that. Um, no, you're right. That's true. But I don't know. You got to do something with it, and that's just always felt natural to me. And I think it's just part of my personality. Sometimes I tell people this when it comes to the continuing education stuff that I do. It's just I talk about the stuff that interests me, and it's ever since I was a kid. If something really captures my attention, it's just my nature to get into it more and then to tell other people about it. And if they're interested, they tend to like that. And if they're not, they tend to get sick of me talking. But it's just kind of what I do. So I've always seen continuing education as just kind of a natural byproduct of that. Like I'm really, this topic interests me. I've pursued it, from an academic kind of learning, side of things. I've implemented into my practice, and so I know how to do it. And now I want to help somebody else learn about it so that they can do it. Um, so it just feels natural to me. Like it just always has like that kind of thing. So, um, like I said, doing licensure supervision, when I first started doing that, I remember the way it felt to me is, I'm the oldest child in my family. And so it kind of felt to me like I was just being an older brother. Like I got these new therapists coming in, and I'm just helping them kind of figure out the ropes, figure out how to do this and make it work for you. Um, I already talked about the continuing education stuff, and the staffing stuff's kind of the same way. It's just like you're struggling with a particular issue, a particular client, whatever. Like, okay, how can we help? And that's the beauty of those group type activities, the staffings, even the CEUs. Even though I'm the main one speaking, other people chime in, so you get to hear from all these other therapists. And so, whether I'm the one providing the information or just facilitating a situation or an environment where information can be shared, it just, how it feels, it just feels natural. Like this is what's supposed to happen. And what I've learned kind of through owning, this really has occurred to me big time through owning the business is, if I just have my own caseload and that's what I focus on, I can impact, if that's all I do, I'm just a full-time therapist, at best I can impact maybe 35 people a week, you know? But by investing in other people, I can impact so many more. The reach is so much further. And then it's that effect that never stops, because then they can invest in other people and then those people invest in other people. And that's how it all works, you know? So yeah, it just feels natural. It just feels like this is what's supposed to happen.
Well, and I think, one of the things that's always impressed me about you is there are a lot of people out there who will get to a certain point where they're, let's say, adequate or good enough, right? And it's like, okay, I can tread water here. I've got enough skills and abilities to be able to make a decent living, to take care of people to an acceptable level. But you've always seemed to be the kind of person, kind of business owner, the kind of therapist who's looking to continue to grow and learn and evolve and advance. And I guess my question is, what drives that?
My DNA, maybe. I mean, for real, because it's always been that way. It's just natural to me. I've been told my whole life, like, if you're into it, you're going to be into it. And if you're not, you're not. Sometimes it's being said to me as a compliment, and sometimes it's being said to me as a criticism, when it's one of those things I'm not that into. Um, yeah, that's just, I don't know. It really does seem like that's just kind of my nature is, you know, why not try to take it to the next level? Another thing I tell people a lot is I get bored. Um, Once things kind of calm down and feel kind of smooth, then I'm ready for the next thing. And sometimes I jump the gun too much. Sometimes I'm too impatient and I have bitten off more than I can chew, and I have um, jumped at opportunities that maybe I shouldn't have, and things like that. So it's not always like always a positive thing. Um, but that is just kind of how I'm wired. Like, okay, I've got this part down. What comes next? And again, going back to the name of the business, Evolution Mental Health Services, that was a huge part of it. Is I realized I had spent so many years setting goals for myself, and then thinking when I hit that goal, everything will be cool. If I get this, if I promote to this position, then like that'll be good. Or if I get to this level of income, that'll be good, or whatever it might be. And what I found over and over is that it wasn't. I got to that place and then it was like, okay, now what? I know I've told this story before on the podcast, I'm pretty sure. But the first time I got promoted into like an upper management role, I got promoted into the role of clinical director. And at the time I was 35. And as I'm in the office with the two owners of the business and I mean, I just got the job 10 minutes ago, and I'm sitting there on the CEO/owner's couch thinking, there's nowhere else to go. What am I going to do? Like, I don't want to do it. I haven't even done the job for a day. And I'm like, I don't want to do this the next 30 years, you know? Um, so yeah, so that like evolution for lack of a better word, it's just, that's how I'm wired. Like what comes next, what comes next. And that was the thing with that name, is just accepting that, like, no. It's not about a goal. It's like hitting a goal. It's just about that continual process, the fulfillment or whatever you want to call it is from the journey. It's from the work.
Right. So, can you maybe talk a little bit more about kind of this newer focus that you have with the consulting and kind of where you envision that going and kind of the impact that you're hoping that it has?
Well, what unfortunately, there's never not like there's always going to be a need for people, to get help with their mental health. It's just always going to be a thing. There are always going to be people with addiction issues. That's always going to be a thing. I teach these classes on substance use, and one of the things I say is, if history has taught us anything, it's that people like to get messed up. It's just, it's just a thing. And for some of those people, it becomes a problem. And there are always people that are going to be depressed, always people that are going to be anxious. People are always going to have marital problems. Kids are always going to, you know, sometimes you're always going to have kids with behavioral issues and emotional issues. It's just this stuff is never going to end. It's part of the human existence. So there's never going to cease to be a need for this type of work. And again, like I can only see so many people, you know, um, and I like, like I like working with new people. It's part of the, again, going back to the licensure supervision thing, that like kind of youthful energy and optimism. And, um, but it doesn't have to end in youth. Anytime someone's taking on a new thing, like you can have that. And so I've always liked kind of being part of that process. And so whether it's a new therapist who needs some help getting started in the field, or whether it's somebody who's never done a private practice before and they're thinking about starting it, and could use a little guidance on that path, or somebody who is gonna think about adding a type of service, or they're just like, I mean, I had somebody asking me recently, it was just like about basic kind of billing stuff, because he's got his own practice and he's like, I'm having money troubles, man. Like, and I get it. I've been there. So I didn't come at it from like, well, this is something I've been great at since day one. I'm like, here's what I've learned, and some of the things I've done, that worked and didn't work, and kind of what I'm doing now, you know? So yeah, I just enjoy that kind of feeding back into other people, and then seeing that as, like you said, that ripple effect of like, it just keeps on going. And whether someone works for Evolution Mental Health Services or works for their own company or a different company, like I said, there's plenty of clients to go around. So you don't have to be like my coworker for me to help you out.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really neat that you're making this transition, because you said a little bit earlier that maybe you've jumped into some things that you shouldn't have, and you've made some mistakes. And I think that is a very valuable asset to bring along with yourself as a mentor, right? Because nobody's going to do it perfectly. And I think that our mistakes and our missteps are really what help us, if we're open to them, they're really what help us learn and grow. So I think, we talk about at Action Coach, we talk about the quality of your decisions will improve when you improve the quality of your mentor, when you improve the quality of the education you have, and when you improve the quality of the questions that you have. So I think this is really a pretty cool and exciting thing that you're going to be doing. So is there a specific I guess demographic that you're looking for to bring into this? Are you looking for younger therapists? Are you looking for therapists who want to start their own business? What's your niche, do you think, going to be?
I think where I could be most beneficial, yeah, new therapists, assuming that I'm a good fit as far as like the kind of work they want to do, you know, because I haven't practiced every type of therapy. I haven't worked with every single population. So I'll be real with somebody, if somebody wants to start, a clinic to treat kids with autism ages, 3 to 7, it would probably be kind of slimy of me to tell them I can be a big help, with that population. So, but if that same person, say they weren't looking for help for actual treatment for that demographic, but let's say their question was, more on the like the business side of that, then maybe I could be of help, depending on what the issue was. So, um, but yeah, so new people or people that are kind of new into the private practice world or considering the private practice world, um, or people who maybe they're in a well established business, but they're wanting to add some kind of program that I could be effective with. I've done a lot of work on the addiction side of things, and so like somebody who wanted to beef up or add like an addiction treatment type program, would be a great fit for me. And then, probably not to start, but big picture, I would love to some point down the road have more than just me that's helping with this. And then maybe, I'm not your guy, but this person, can speak into that. So that's going to be a while probably, but yeah, so it could be, new therapists, existing therapists trying new things, um, established businesses that want to add something and need a little support, and those are all things I've kind of been approached with, in my career. I already talked about doing licensure supervision. I've had people, seek help for doing that, like with like a new addiction program. I just you talked about those mistakes. I just met with someone yesterday who was telling me about a couple particular struggles that she was having in her in her business and practice. And my first response was, well, good news is you're not alone, and told her a story of when I had been in a very similar experience, and then told her kind of how I dealt with that and what I learned from it. um so I feel like that wasn't a real direct answer, but I would say, hit me up, let's talk, and I'll be honest with you if I can help you or not.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because as you were talking, I was kind of slipping. It's not football season yet, but I was kind of slipping into the coaching tree mentality, right? I think, you got the Greg Sutmiller coaching tree, and I think that's going to be really, really neat to be able to look at someday, and for you to be able to say, I impacted this person and this person and this person, and seeing how the branches all kind of come out. I got to imagine that'll be a pretty neat thing.
I mean, you and I met because of networking, you know, and there's a lot of value in that. And that's one of the things that I like about, doing like licensure supervision. So at one time, I was a new therapist who had a supervisor, and I actually had three different supervisors that I worked with in my career. One that I worked with really briefly, and then the other two were kind of split for the remainder of the time. And to some degree or another, I still talk to all three of them. Um, and I think that's cool. That we still have that relationship. And it's weird, man. It's like two of the three have like come to CEU events that I put on. Like we're now they're in the audience, and uh, that's trippy to me, But the one I had briefly, I didn't have him for very long. He's come to a few of my things, and we were talking after one of them, and he was being real complimentary, just real good to see how you progressed. And I told him a story. I said, there's something you told me that you one time in supervision that always stuck with me. And I told him that story. And I said, I've shared that with a bunch of my supervisees. And I told that story, and he was like, man, I can't believe you remember that. But just thinking about, like he shares an experience with me that I then share with other people, and how that connection just goes on, I think that's really cool. So like I have connections with the people who help me, not just my licensure supervisors, but other people that I've worked with over the years, you know, and then I get to like, invest in some way into somebody else. And then those are connections that we have, forever. I think that's a really,
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that's impressive to me too, because this is something in my life I realized that I let having a mentor slip for a while, right? So I had mentors, and then kind of got out of that habit, and kind of got into my rut, wasn't growing, And then I came over and started doing this coaching thing and got a coach. And I think there's so much value in having a mentor, but also having your mentor be somebody who eats their own cooking, right? So you've got, I mean, how many different mentors do you have?
Well, that's a broad question. I've got, like I was saying, the people that like have helped me along the way that I still have access to that are like real people. If that, and I say real people because I have other people that I no, well, what I was going to say is I have other people that I've gleaned so much from that are no longer with us through books, through recordings, through courses that I've taken. Um, and that's really cool. And I don't know if you'd call somebody who you've never met in person a mentor or not, but yeah, they're like, like I mean, therapist wise, like two that come to mind, like Carl Jung and Aaron Beck. So Carl Jung, he's pretty old school. He was a contemporary of Freud, um, but said a lot of things that I found very intriguing. And I've read his books and um, different articles and things, and I feel like I've learned a lot from that guy, even though he was long dead before I showed up on the earth. Aaron Beck is kind of the OG of cognitive behavioral therapy. And same thing, read the books. I've gone through trainings through the Beck Institute. By the time I was doing trainings in the Beck Institute, he was still alive, but he was super old. So you didn't get to sit and learn directly from him. The best you got was watching videos of him. And then you got to learn from the other people that worked there. But even just watching those videos, I was so amazed at the mileage he could get with a client with these, what seemed like really simple tactics, these really simple methods. Um, but again, like it's not a guy I ever met, you know.
Yeah, but he's shaped who you are. He's shaped the therapist you become. So I definitely think you'd call him a mentor.
And like right now, the big thing I've been working on my own personal side right now is I've been really, really uh, focusing on mindfulness, both, incorporated it into my own life personally, but also into my practice and as a therapist. And been doing a lot of training on that with the end goal of becoming like a certified mindfulness instructor. And the organization I'm going through, like the people that are involved in that are really highly respected people who have written a lot of books and things. And I've had the opportunity a little bit to like learn live and in person from those people and have, some conversations. And so again, like I don't know those people directly, but it's been impactful, you know. Um, and plus, the real life people that, not that they're not real life, but you know what I mean, that I, can run into, at a conference or send a text message and, things like that. Um, so quite a few in various forms and contexts.
To have. And yeah, I was talking about the quality of the mentor that you have, the quality of information that you process, quality of the questions that you ask leads you to make better decisions. Better decisions leads you to have a better life. So I really do think it all starts with who you've got in your corner and what you're feeding into your brain.
It's worth pointing out that part of the reason I really like doing this kind of stuff is I learn from it. I grow from it. So sometimes it's like, the person that everyone's heard of, so this mindfulness program I'm doing, the kind of the top person, I guess you might say, in that program is Jack Cornfield, who's really well known in that space. Um, and so, no one's shocked if I say I learned something from Jack Cornfield, but sometimes it is a conversation I have with somebody that I supervise, you know, or somebody that I'm talking to at one of these CEU things or something, and I pick up a bit of knowledge or a bit of insight. And so that is I tell people this all the time. One of the reasons I do this is it keeps me sharp. It keeps me moving forward and progressing.
All right. Well, that's awesome, Greg. Congratulations. It's some pretty exciting stuff. And I think if we take nothing else from today's episode, it's, make sure that you've got yourself a quality mentor and that you take advantage of them. So, well, that does it for this episode of the Business Brains and B.S. podcast. Remember, progress beats perfection. Hope is not a strategy, but it is a necessity. And the BS that tends to hold us back usually starts in our own heads. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, and make sure you share it with a business owner who you think needs to hear it. Until next time, we'll see you.